health and safety is our number one most important goal. And I think to myself, is it? Because if you don't make any money, you won't have any people to worry about. I'm the expert in health and safety. So it definitely has gone too far. I don't think it makes any safer. My whole ethos is about less is more. And you get a 50, 60 page document. It's like no one in their right mind, even a health and safety person, isn't going to read that. This might be controversial, but I don't think there's anything wrong in the regulations. They basically give the company the power to come up with their own controls, which is basically a risk assessment. The whole industry, if we're being honest, it's quite dysfunctional, right? Or it's very dysfunctional. And it's quite combative, and it's dog eat dog, and it suits people for it to be dysfunctional in certain instances, because they can make more money out of that dysfunction and that chaos. They're there to support, to coach, to mentor, not to actually do, because safety should be owned by everyone. That's my belief. I can guarantee you 1 minute after the health and safety person's gone, they've taken them off. It'd be much better to try and get people to want to look after their own safety, not because they're told to do it.
Mr. Rumbol, Mr. Health and Safety.
Hello.
Thanks for coming down, mate. Like I said earlier, you are the first Mr. Health and Safety that I've had on.
Yeah.
So I've been avoiding it.
I was going to say, I don't blame you.
Because it's very easy to digress down a certain route, but I think you might offer a different sort of like perspective on the industry.
Hopefully, no pressure.
Do you just want to give us a bit of an idea of sort of like your journey into the health and safety world? I know you mentioned earlier that you've worked in construction, or your man did.
I mean, so back in the day, so I left school in 2005. Probably sort of 3-4 years prior to that, my dad sort of was in the waste industry, haulage, demolition. So I've been labouring on sites since the age of 12.
It's a roughish job.
Probably shouldn't say it.
Labouring on sites is a roughish job.
But it was, it was all secret squirrel. I wasn't meant to be on sites. It wasn't that kind of stuff. It was going in my dad's lorry. It was just...
from the age of 12?
Yeah. So you shouldn't be doing it. But it was on domestic houses. No one was going to say anything. But my dad drove a real big work ethic into me from the age of 7. I've had paper rounds as soon as I could, when I got a proper paper round at the age of 12. So basically he was trying to drive it into me about the value of money and the value of work. Which on reflection, it's a great thing. I think sometimes it took away a little bit of the joy of childhood, but I wouldn't change it if I'm being honest. But essentially sort of went onto construction sites, like the crack, like the camaraderie, but knew I didn't really want to do that as a profession. I'll be honest with you, I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do when I left school. All I knew was I wasn't going to university. School absolutely tried to drill it into us that we had to go to university. And it was all about UCAS points, and it was all about this kind of stuff. And I was like, I don't want to go. I want to go and earn money. So I didn't know what I wanted to do. Anyway, my dad turned around one day and said, there's this company that insured him, and said, there's people earning sort of £600, £700 a day. This was in 2005, and they're doing health and safety. I was like, health and safety? I was like, come on, right? Honestly, it's like second only to a parking attendant, But he was like, go and give it a try. He said, go down to their office, see what it's about. And they were an insurance brokerage based in Croydon, down in Whiteleaf. And I went in there and basically met the two owners, which gave me a good feeling for the place. And they basically said, look, we've got two sides to our business. We've got this insurance brokerage side, and we've got this risk management division, which is really in its infancy. But essentially all it is to look after our clients that we insure to try and drive down their premiums. They was like, come and try out, see what one you like. Essentially, that was on day 1. On day 2, I was under the desk, and they were saying, right, crack on. And ultimately, from that point onwards, for 3 years, because they were trying to, I got on very well with the owners, still get on very well with one of the owners to date, who owns a big insurance company in London. And they couldn't have done more for me. For whatever reason, they saw something in me, but they put me through every single training course you can imagine within the first 2.5 years, and I just lapped it up. So by the age of 20, I had the top qualification you could have in the industry. Obviously, I had I had experience, but I didn't have any of the practical experience, which is a bit of an issue nowadays, shall we say. There's lots of people, textbook consultants, as we call them. But by the age of 20, I had basically everything I needed to. And they had paid for all of it. And, I couldn't have dreamt that they would have done that. And then by the age of 21, they basically they weren't really going anywhere. The risk management division, they didn't really care about. It was me and my boss, who then became my business partner, just on the golf course one day, and I said, look, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to leave if we can't do anything with this. And then we were like, right, why don't we try and buy the business? He wanted more of it because he was the boss, so to speak. And he said, well, I want to have more of a share. And I was like, that doesn't work for me. It has to be 50-50. So I suppose I've got quite a strong sense of working with my family, who are all kind of, I don't want to call them entrepreneurs. They're not. They're just people who have worked for themselves. I knew that. What's that? Sorry.
Still an
yeah,
entrepreneur,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. But I just knew that I couldn't work for anyone else.
Yeah.
I've always known that, and I never have worked. Apart from that period of time, I've never worked for anyone else. And essentially went to the owner of the business, said that this is what we want to do. Took a little bit of negotiating, but then got there, and then 2009, we bought the business out in full and sort of took it on its way from there.
And then it's basically, back then it was just the construction industry?
No, right? Actually, back then it was and luckily it wasn't, because it was 2008 financial crisis when nothing was going on. We had a plethora of businesses. There was a heavy slant on construction, but we had a chain of betting shops. We had events company. We had offices in London. It was quite diverse.
Health and safety in all betting shops.
Yeah, you'd be surprised the amount of violence and stuff that goes on in them things. They needed it. But yeah, we got involved in anything and everything. And when we started that business up, you were just taking what was on offer. There wasn't any strategy behind it. I would actually argue that, and I probably shouldn't say this on here, the only real strategies come in the last 2 years of my business. Apart from that, it was what's out there, take what you can, and make a fist of it, which we did. But that's how I got into the industry.
There is something to be said about that as well, to be fair. Like, I know strategies are amazing for plan and execute, but sometimes just saying yes and just whatever's out there, bringing it, and then figuring out in-house how you're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've always approached it. And look, I still do to an extent. Sure. And I don't think there's anything wrong in that. If you try and plan everything to the nth degree, you'll never get it off the ground. I always say this to my wife, who's actually my business partner. She's like a massive planner, and she'll think of all of the conceivable things that need to be dealt with, that could go wrong, that we need to create a plan for. Whereas I'm sort of one who will go and I can vision it in my head, and I'm going, right, I'm going to go and grab it, and then I'll work about how to do it later. That's also got its drawbacks. But when we come together, we sort of that's why the last 2 years have been so successful. It's a brilliant partnership.
We were literally talking about this on the way up here.
Right.
How the entrepreneurial spirit stems from risk appetite as such, about how you have people who are usually very academically clever, and they think through things too much. They think through the risks so much that sometimes it puts them off. Yeah. And then you get the other side of the coin, where someone who's maybe not so academic, but they are happy to take the risk. Their risk appetite's larger.
Yes. That's pretty accurate.
We were literally discussing this earlier, weren't we, about this. So at that time, then, you obviously decided to buy the business out 50-50 at the time, was it?
It was 50-50 once I had negotiated that with my business partner.
On the golf course.
On the golf course, so he wanted a bigger share, which I get, but I wasn't prepared to accept that. And that was like, if we're going to do this, we need to both be bought in. Didn't think that a sort of a 75-25 or whatever was ever going to work.
Sure.
When we built that business from 2009 all the way up until when I bought him out in 2021, I think it was.
So give us an idea how, so we'll jump on to 2021 when you brought him out.
Yeah.
But during that time, give us an idea how health and safety specifically in the construction industry has changed, because I suppose from 2008-9 to 5-6 years ago, that's, I would imagine you might know better, is probably the largest change in the health and safety realm. And
it's massively, I wouldn't be able to say exactly when it is, but over that period of time, it's kind of like it's a boiling the frog in a pan sort of analogy. You don't really realise it's happening, but there are some huge changes that are taking place. I mean, I suppose the biggest one in the construction industry from a health and safety perspective was CDM regs, which changed from, they were 2007 to 2015. They got updated, and there was quite a big change then. But really it was it's been driven by, some of the standards have been driven by a lot of the big tier ones in terms of, how much effort they put into it. I remember when I was starting out, there was some real questionable standards, even from some of the really big players. And then I remember, and they get a relatively negative press for their health and safety side of stuff from a lot of people who are subcontractors, but Berkeley Homes, we worked on a lot of their projects and they really professionalized it. I'm not saying I agreed with everything that they did, but they took it to another level. And then you started getting these other players into the market, like your Lend-Leases, your multiplexes, your Maces, and they wanted to push it on. And that's great. And that's one side of the market. I can tell you now, working across all aspects of the market, we don't really work too much with the tier ones because they've obviously got their own teams and they've got their own management structures. We work a lot sort of tier 2 and below. Them tier 2 and below contractors can't possibly implement what those guys can. And that doesn't mean it's not compliant. It's just another way of going about it. And a lot of the time on the big tier 1 projects, there's a big brand element to it as well, and how they come across from an image perspective, which I'm not saying is wrong, but it costs a lot of money to get that. And you'll see that now if we take it into the fit out world. There's some big fit out players who, under the guise of health and safety, they'll introduce things which are actually more about protection of brand and how they come across and how they look to their stakeholders.
Yeah, there's two parts of the conversation I want to go down there. But let's stick to the one you were most recently talking about. So that was something I want to ask you about, whether health and safety is a box ticking exercise in the industry, because I've spoke to quite a few people who, some people say they feel like it is, whether it actually is, they feel like it's more of a box ticking exercise. And if they're seen to not be doing it as they're doing it, then they'll get a bad rap and they're protecting their brand. And there's also people I spoke to who actually genuinely do believe in it and they do it for the right reasons. Yeah,
I can go off in any direction on this one. So ultimately, health and safety, when it boils all down to it, it's quite simple. It's about protecting the person who's out on that site on that day, keeping them safe. And ultimately that's multifaceted, because keeping them safe there and then, it might be protecting them from a working at height failure, that they fall from height, or whatever it might be. But then there's also the health implication side of it, which people can't see as obvious. So, protecting people from the big one at the moment, silica dust, which they can't see there and then. So it won't become a problem for 10, 15, 20 years. Obviously asbestos is the other one. But when you boil it down, that's all that it's about, keeping people safe. The problem is there's all of this management systems and things that have grown around it, which are under the guise of protecting people, but might have different drivers to it. So I would say at the moment, and I still think this within the industry, that people are focusing too much on things which aren't making it safer. So the paperwork side of it. I mean, the paperwork side of it is unbelievable, what people have to do and what they get asked to do. And it comes from so many different places. So it comes from a safety schemes in procurement, a CHAS or a construction line or a safe contractor. And they want more and more and more each year. So you comply one year, next year they'll try and push you for something else. And I would argue in a lot of instances it's not making it any safer. Or they might be getting pushed from their ISO certifications. So they go for ISO 9001, 45001, and suddenly that needs more and more. And ultimately what happens is it just builds and builds and builds. And I always say you never get rid of processes, you always add more. Before you know it, you've gone so far that you've got this whole management system that everyone's meant to comply with, and all your site teams and managers are meant to comply with. And all they do is they sit behind a desk and they push bits of paper around. Let's be fair, they make a lot of it up. Right? They'll turn around and say they've done a toolbox talk, and we all know they haven't. The ink's still dry on it just before you've come, or so they've done their work equipment checks or whatever, and everyone's playing a game. They know, they've not done it. And I always look at this and I speak to the man. I mean, I less and less now go on sites doing the actual inspection side, but you can have a crack with them. You're like, no, we all know this is baloney, isn't it? It's balmy. So it definitely has gone too far. And, we could then go into all the certifications that people are meant to have, the CSCS cards or whatever it might be, that are just adding more layers of bureaucracy, cost. And I don't think, and I'm in the industry and it's in my interest, some of this stuff, I don't think it makes any safer. So when I go in and advise my clients, they're often quite surprised. And my whole ethos is about less is more. especially now with the advent of software and AI and all this stuff, you know, risk assessments, method statements, whatever it might be, and you get a 50, 60 page document. It's like no one in their right mind, even a health and safety person isn't going to read that, let alone someone on the tools. So get rid of it. Don't bother with it. And so it's like trying to get them to understand that, you know, we can actually do this and make it safer and not have to have this world where people are just sitting behind their desks, because ultimately every time they're sat behind their desks, they're not out on site, they're not influencing the workforce, they're not solving problems. I believe that's what they're getting paid for. But the industry's now grown, I believe, into more of like a management exercise. Yeah. And I think it's got lost.
Yeah, there's got to be like a bit of middle ground somewhere, isn't there?
There has to be.
Obviously, I'm not suggesting that the industry goes back to where there was no regulations and standards, because that's unsafe. But I also think it's gone the other way now. It's gone too far. I mean, like the accreditations that we've got to get, and various other contractors out there. And when we're doing it as well, I just think like, is this like really? Do we actually need this?
And I don't think you do. It's a cover in your arse exercise, and it's making. Let's call it as it is. It's making money for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So, you know.
Glad you said it and I didn't.
No, it's true. So, like, let's take, for instance, I'm not going to name the specific ones, but let's say the accreditation schemes, and everyone will know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There's lots of them. Well, the whole ethos behind that was that you go and get one accreditation. And that means that if you then go and work for one of the tier 1s or the tier 2s, they ask you, have you got your SSIP certification? And you say yes, and then you pass through. They didn't all have their own special one that they needed. So the problem is now you might go and tender for one client with one contractor, and they say, right, you need to have such and such a certification. You go to another one, they say they want the other one because it suits them. The other one says something else. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there having to have 5 or 6 different accreditations. It doesn't make it any safer for anyone. It honestly doesn't. And I also know that anyone, regardless of their standard, the subcontractor, regardless of their standard, they could be the best, they could be the worst. If you want to get one and you're prepared to pay the money and you go and speak to someone, they'll get you the accreditation. And what does that mean? They'll make up information. They'll plagiarize stuff, you know, because they need it. And I'm not blaming that person for doing that. But it doesn't make it any safer for anyone.
No, you're right.
It's a waste of time.
No, it's interesting it's refreshing to hear your perspective on it, to be honest with you, because like, you know, this topic can go round and round, and there's a lot of back and forth because I look at it from a contractor side, obviously. Yeah. So a lot of the time I have these conversations with people, and it's do you feel like you're just hitting your head against a brick wall, really?
And when I advise my clients, I'm putting myself in their position. You know, I'm trying to come in and go, yeah, okay, look, I'm the expert in health and safety, but I'm also wanting to understand how your business operates as a whole and how the industry operates, because when I understand that, I can provide better advice. So it's like trying to understand, okay, they want to get to this level. They're at this current standard. They want to get to this level. What do they need to do? Okay, so that client needs X, Y, Z behind them. Or somebody else says, we just want to comply. You know, we just want to do the bare minimum. We want to comply. And it's like, okay, well, that's a different route to compliance. And I think some health and safety people sort of get a little bit high and mighty, thinking that everyone must care about their people. Everyone does. I believe that most companies care about their people. Of course they do. Right, but they also care about making money. And ultimately, I hear a lot of these platitudes out there about, you know, health and safety is our number one most important goal. And I think to myself, is it?
Really?
Because if you don't make any money, you won't have any people to worry about. So why don't we all start being honest about this and say, our most important thing is being a profitable, well-managed, business.
Otherwise, why are we in business?
Why are we in business? And our people are very, very important. And health and safety isn't this subject out on its own in a silo. It's just part of what you do. You do your work, you do your processes, and people are kept safe. And it's not this other. It's not what happens at a lot of businesses, especially as they grow. They have, let's say, for instance, a 200-person organisation. They all go out and they'll get a health and safety manager, and then they might build out a health and safety advisor and whatever. And so health and safety becomes, in many instances, a siloed function. All of the business then goes, well, it's health and safety. That's the manager's responsibility. Give that to the manager, give that to the advisor. Whereas I don't think I'm not saying health and safety teams aren't right internally, because there's absolutely a place for internal teams. But what I'm a fan of is getting companies to own health and safety and have the people within it own health and safety. And if there is a health and safety consultant or advisor or manager, they're there to support, to coach, to mentor, not to actually do, because safety should be owned by everyone. That's my belief. And I also, and this is where I really strongly believe this, lots of health and safety managers, directors, advisors, whatever you want to call them, get it wrong by basically trying to foist upon them what they need to be doing. So if you go and speak to somebody on a construction site and tell them they're doing something wrong, more often than not, that person isn't going to engage with you in the right way, because human beings do not like to be told by another human being what to do. Yeah. I think it's quite deeply ingrained in our psyche that we want sovereignty of ourselves and sovereignty of thought. So when a health and safety person comes onto site and says, put on your glasses, right? They'll put on their glasses because there's the authority, they have to put on their glasses. I can guarantee you 1 minute after the health and safety person's gone, they've taken them off, right? And everyone obsesses about this whole thing, whereas it'd be much better to try and get people to want to look after their own safety because they want to do it, not because they're told to do it. And I think if people flip that on its head and try to make those changes and that put more power onto the person and stop treating the people like they're the problem, then they'd get there far quicker. But what people want to do and they look to do is, there's an issue that we need to solve. Let's create a rule. Let's create a process, and we can manage people by a process or a rule. Personally, I just don't think it's the right way of going about it.
No, I think it gets too much in the end, to be honest with you. You mentioned someone earlier as well about, you obviously work with tier 2s and tier 3s predominantly. The rules and the regulations apply exactly the same to a tier 1 than a smaller contractor, tier 3s and even smaller contractors. Like, why do you think that's a problem for the smaller contractors? Because they're, in theory, adhering to regulations that bigger contractors are doing. They might not be set up for it, but they still have to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily think it is a problem. So the regulations, this might be controversial, but I don't think there's anything wrong in the regulations. The regulations give you, ultimately, there's the Act at the top, which is the Health and Safety at Work Act, and then there's all the regulations made underneath it. They basically give the company the power to come up with their own controls, which is basically a risk assessment. And you have, and I don't want to get too technical, but you have things that you absolutely must do. And then you have things that, you've got basically a risk versus a cost argument to it. So ultimately, you'll get sort of, let's just say tier 1, let's say a tier 1 contractor. They might turn around, and this is probably the easiest one that people can understand, is they'll turn around and say that everyone needs to wear 5 points of PPE, right? There is nothing in legislation that says 5 points of PPE needs to be used. In fact, PPE in the hierarchy of control is the absolute lowest of the low in terms of control measures. So actually what you should be doing is doing everything possible to avoid people having to wear PPE in the first place. But if you go on a tier 1 contractor site, you can't get anywhere without 5 points of PPE, right? The only reason they're doing that is because it's the easiest way to control and manage it. If they suddenly said somebody can wear 3 points, this person can wear 4 points, they've got 500, 600 people on site, even more sometimes. So I don't blame them for doing that. But if I go to a tier, it doesn't really matter, tier 2 contractor, tier 3 contractor, I will always challenge them. I'll say, okay, you want 5 points of PPE? Why? I'll ask them why. They'll say, well, that's what we should be doing. I was like, says who? Well, that's what the industry does. Well, okay, the 1% of the industry that's tier 1 contractors. Okay, if you want to do that, fine. And it's belt and braces, it's fine. I was like, but here's the other side of that. You'll be going around the whole time acting like the policeman, telling people to put on their glasses when they actually don't need to be wearing them. So in my opinion, if you can try and remain nimble as a tier 2, tier 3 contractor, and you're not like this big oil tanker like a tier 1 that can't change anything without going through layers of bureaucracy, I think that's the joy of being a tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, whatever contractor, that you can do that. So there are things you can't get away from, and there's rules that you can't get away from because they are there set in stone. But there's a lot of other things that people take as rules and take as legislation, which has just built up over time that people perceive as that's what we have to do. And you don't. a lot of the time. But there are, don't get me wrong, there's certain things you have to do. So let's say, working at height regs, they'll turn around and say, okay, well, if you've got a scaffold up, it needs to be inspected on a weekly basis. Okay. So everyone on a tier 1 site, all the scaffolds will be inspected on a weekly basis. Go to I'm not even going to call them a whatever tier, go to a high-end resi contractor in central London, and they're a couple of tiers below, the prime ones, they're still required to do that. Now, will they do it? Maybe not. And do you know what? There won't be any issues until shit and fan collide. And if that does happen, then they'll start being asked the questions and they'll be saying, right, so that's kind of it in terms of there are a lot of rules there that have to be adhered to, but there are quite a lot also that aren't quite as clear cut as people think.
So give us an idea of so the business, I'll jump back into the business now. So that's obviously developed so much in the last 20 years. Roughly 20 years since you brought out. So give us an idea of when, so you officially brought out yourself in 2021, was it? Yeah,
me. So what happened was COVID struck, everyone knows, 2020, whatever it was. We had March 2020, we had our highest ever month in terms of income. It was quite laughable. We were like flying high. And then literally the next month, I think, which was the April, I don't know what we went from, but we went to basically, and I had a team of 20 around me at this point. I think we grossed in April 2020, $5,000. Whoa. Right, literally it went, and this was because construction had stopped, hadn't it? Everyone was saying it was still going, but it had stopped for a while. And I was sat there going, our biggest fit out contractor had pulled the rug as soon as it happened.
Yeah, of course.
And this client was probably paying us, I don't know, 350 grand a year. So it was sizable.
Yeah, of course.
But I look back on it now and say single-handedly, it is the best thing that ever happened to my business.
What, COVID?
Yeah, literally the best thing that happened. It allowed me to jump off the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
There wasn't really anything to do at the time. For the first 3 weeks, I was sitting there, I was going to the office every day because I wanted to get out.
Yeah.
And I was literally going, what are we going to do? I just didn't know what was going to happen, like everyone. Then furlough came out and all the rest of it, and we started to make our way through. But it allowed me to jump off the hamster wheel. And it allowed me to start looking at things. I'm quite a big sort of visioner anyway. I'm at my most comfortable when I'm sitting alone or going for a walk on my own and sort of thinking about where things need to go. Yeah. And I knew there wasn't that something needed to be done. I wanted, me and my business partner, we were good friends, but there just something wasn't quite right. And I knew that I needed to go off on my own. And ultimately that decision wouldn't have been made without COVID. It would have just carried on going. Sure. So ultimately it was a very hard time. Me and my business partner were good friends. And it was one of, not the hardest, but it was one of the hardest conversations I've had to have, because I knew that he didn't want to, that's not what he wanted. But I've always dealt with things honestly, and, to be upfront about it and say, I just wanted to go out on my own. And, but it was a big risk because ultimately we had, I think, about 18 to 20 people working for us. I didn't know if I was going to be able to buy him out.
Yeah.
I was doing it saying, I just need us to be apart. And I didn't know where it was going to go. And we had a successful business because ultimately we'd recovered after COVID once we'd done that. I'm a great believer in, without getting too spiritual about it, in the universe and everything else. Yeah, I was just like, I'm going to put it out there and I believe that everything's going to go okay. And ultimately it was quite a testing period of time. And I would say that testing for me, I'm sure it was testing for him. But ultimately we managed to do it in a way that allowed me to take the business off in its new direction. It allowed my business partner to go off in the direction that he wanted to. And I'd like to say that I did it as sensitively as I possibly could. And then from that period of time, I then took the business in the direction, I was going to say I wanted to take it in the business in the direction that I wanted to. I still think it took me another 2 years of making mistakes and learning for it to get to where it finally needed to get to for me to make the next changes.
So what was that direction you wanted to take in?
So I didn't know it at the time, but ultimately I bought out a business, all of it, for a lot of money. And and it had 30% of it would have been not construction.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really my bag. I've always wanted to be in construction, is what I know. So it had that aspect to it. We also had too many clients. We had 450 clients that had been built up over the years.
Christ.
Yeah.
It's a lot of account management going on.
Oh, don't get me started. Honestly, it brings me out in cold sweat. So ultimately, I'll tell you what happened. Me and my wife were in a strategy meeting, and I was kind of tearing my hair out. I was going, I cannot deal with this anymore. I was having to, so for clients, I'm going to be politically correct here, for clients that weren't aligned with us, we were basically chasing our tail by having staff that weren't at the required level, and we were just chasing our tail, and I was dealing with every single issue you can think of. It all came back to me.
Yeah, of course.
And I was like, I cannot do this anymore. I can't remember when I went off to India. I went off to India for a month, just upsticked and went off. And I wasn't not going to say I found myself and all that. I was just, but I was just like, right, I can't continue like this. And then we sat down, and my wife had been saying for a long time, she was like, I think you need to cut basically the 80-20 rule. She was like, I think you need to cut 80% of your business to keep the top 20% who account for most of our business. And I was like, I can't do that. I've paid X amount of money for all these clients. She was like, well, you can do what you want, to be honest. It took me about another 6 to 9 months to fully reconcile it. And then I pushed the button and I said, right, we're doing it. And basically from that point to where we are today, we went from 450 clients to 40.
Yeah.
And I was gradually, getting my team into shape with the right people in the right seats and moving on the people that weren't right for the business. And I'll be honest with you, that 3 or 4 years was a complete and utter nightmare.
Was it?
Oh, I look back on it now and go, I'm not quite sure quite how I kept it all together, because it was like having to deal with people issues, client issues, everything just going off at different levels. And I was like, right. But once we got through it and where we are today, I am so glad we did it. It's been the best thing ever, because now we have 40 clients that are all aligned to how we want to be. Yeah. We work with good people, nice people that we want to work with, because I don't want to work with arseholes. I've had enough of that.
Plenty of them in our industry as well.
There are. And it's just like, if someone wants to, I'm not stupid enough to think that people don't employ me to protect themselves. I know that. But you just know there was some people in that were just, first sign of anything going wrong, you would be thrown under the bus, then that's all you were there for. So I was like, right, move them on. And I'm when I did this sort of cutting out of the clients,
how on earth,
there was some big old clients that I cut.
I was going to say, how on earth, like, how do you cut a client out? Because I'm thinking in my head when you said that, like, how would I tell a client I don't want to work with them anymore? So
ultimately, my whole approach to life is just going through the front door and be honest.
Nice.
Right? You have to. So it would be having conversations with people, saying, look, this isn't going to be one of these conversations where I say it's all about, this is nothing to do with you, it's all me. It's kind of like, just to make myself feel better. Yeah, exactly. It's like, look, we don't align anymore with where we're going as a business. And ultimately trying to say to them, look, from a business perspective, there's other people that we know that we think are going to be better placed to support you. And there was a lot of people who have done quite well out of this situation where I've passed business on to them and said, right, this client's not right for us, but they're probably going to be right for you. So we just tried to do it as sensitively as possible. There were some clients that really, really didn't like it. It's been an interesting kind of experience whereby, so clients would be very happy to, if you did a bad job for them, they don't mind telling you where to go.
Yeah.
Do it on the other foot. And there were some very testing conversations. But look, ultimately in life, I believe you've got to be able to stand behind yourself and say you've done what's right for you. If someone else doesn't like that, I can't control what someone else likes and doesn't like. If it's right for me, then I'll do it. And if someone doesn't like what that is, then that's I can't be responsible for that. You
said something a minute ago about how basically the coin the phrase thrown under a bus. Mm-hmm. That's all the time in our industry. People throw people under the bus, whether it's health and safety, whether it's site manager to a subcontractor or main contractor, but whatever it is. Like that's a real problem in the industry. Like, why do you think it's a drastic problem from a health and safety perspective in the construction industry?
Well, yeah, I mean, ultimately, as you said, I don't think it's just a health and safety issue. I think
whole industry,
the whole industry, if we're being honest, it's quite dysfunctional, right? Or it's very dysfunctional, and it's quite combative, and it's dog eat dog, and it's got a lot of things set up against it, I believe. But that also presents a great opportunity for companies who want to act a little bit differently. You know, some of the best companies that I work with build relationships based on sort of, it sounds a bit cliche, but values. They keep a core group of subcontractors and supply chains. They pay them at a certain point in time. Like I know one client, I love working for this client. They're like, look, we can't pay our subcontractors within 30 days, but we absolutely guarantee to do it on the 42nd day.
Yeah.
And every 42nd day, everyone gets paid and everyone knows it. And they've got such a loyal branch of supply chain partners, as they will call them. And they've grown a really successful, fabulous business from that. But ultimately that's driven from the top. Like I've advised so many companies over the years, and it's always about how the management structure and the leadership functions. If I'm being honest, excuse me, if your MD or your CEO doesn't have strong values and is unethical and everything else, it will drain through the whole company. And suddenly the COO or the operations director, they will be that because they take their nod from the person above, and then that will all filter down as well. And that's just how it operates. The best companies I work for, and they can still be ruthless, and if they're run by someone that's kind-hearted, that's got family values, that's all that, then you just see that permeate through the company. So, you know, no one's ever going to be able to solve the issue with the construction industry being dysfunctional. It is what it is, and it suits people for it to be dysfunctional in certain instances because they can make more money out of that dysfunction and that chaos.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I believe personally that creates a brilliant opportunity for those companies that want to chart a different course, and they can say, okay, well, we're going to run it in a slightly different way, and we're going to do this, and they can then find that they open up an avenue for them as a business, even if they do exactly the same.
I feel like the industry itself, if it wasn't set up in a certain way whereby it is dysfunctional and people are just used the phrase earlier, dog eat dog, and they're just out for themselves. I feel like if the industry wasn't set up like that, the majority of people who act like that wouldn't act like that. Like the majority of people I've met through the world of working in construction or the podcast, whatever it is, they might come across like ruthless, like non-value led people, but they're actually not. It's just the way the industry's set up. They're almost made to be. I
think so. But I think there's also some structural issues. Well, there's many structural issues with it. But I always say this, it's like, let's say, for instance, I'm not picking on any trade in particular here. Let's just say, for instance, you're a brickie, right? If you're a brickie operative and someone says, okay, you can go to work, and I don't know what their day rate is at the moment. I don't know.
Too much.
250? I don't know. I don't even know. 250?
Yeah,
I don't.
probably about right.
Okay, so if they're going to go and work from in the winter, in the bitter cold, from 8 till whatever it is, and they're getting 250 a day. If someone then comes and offers them 275 a day, right? And they don't love this job, right? They're just doing it because they want to pay, they want to get paid, they want to provide for their family and everything else. Then I think there's going to be hard push to find someone who's not going to move for the money. Yep. Whereas I think it's slightly different in the more corporate world, right? Where you can get behind a company and a culture, and you can build that every day in the same location, and you can build this mission statement around, and you can all have a common purpose, which is to drive towards getting to this point. Well, how do you create that with a brickie or a scaffolder or a chippy, whatever it might be? It's like, so people might call them mercenary and then blame them for not turning up because they've gone and earned an extra 20 quid a day. But then it's like, well, I try and look at it from the other perspective. It's like, well, they're in this industry not because they love it. They're in this industry because they want to earn money. And
how would you create a dynamic whereby they can not art, but I'm just floating ideas like how would we be able to create a dynamic whereby they would want to work not for less money, but they'd want to, as a team, push towards a goal. Yeah.
I think then you'd have your situation whereby you it's about company culture, isn't it? And it's about then, and you've seen I was going to say you've seen a few of these and you see them on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn doesn't always create the most accurate representation. So I don't know whether or not it's true. But you see some companies, and they'll choose to and not all of them will do this for valid reasons, but they'll directly employ their labour, right? So then they've got half a chance because they're able to build that culture with them. They're able to invest in their training. Where all the time you've got this fragmented workforce.
It's all subcontracted.
It's all subcontracted out, and then you've got a subcontractor of a subcontractor, and you've got no way of building this team dynamic. So I don't profess to have the answers to it at all, but it sort of goes a little way to explain some of the dysfunction that I don't believe is going to change. And I'm not trying to be negative about it. I just don't see that changing anytime soon, because I just don't see anyone coming up with any solutions in that regard.
Give us an idea of give us an idea of where the business is at, like right now. So you've obviously you brought it out, you changed the direction of it.
Yeah.
You had a tough conversation with your ex-business partner, I suppose. And there's conversations you had as well, by the way, because you're obviously now working with your partner, girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So give us an idea of where the business is now, like what the plans are, and also what it's like working with your partner, because that's a unique, I suppose, dynamic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I mean, where it is at the moment is so we solely focus on the construction industry. We've got two main markets. We work with fit-out contractors, primarily London home counties, and then the other side of the business is main contracting. So high-end resi, infrastructure, resi, not so much sort of house building, but that's kind of the mainstay of the business. 40 clients at this moment in time. I only want to engage probably getting another 5 clients a year, so sort of steady growth. There's 10 of us within the business at the moment. I made a conscious decision to, I might come on to this in a minute, but in terms of the talent that's out there in the market, it's quite hard to get the people that are at the right level to consult for where I need them to get to.
Yeah, that's in general, by the way, just like general talent, like that's like labour. I mean, I spoke about this with Steve on the podcast.
Right.
I just feel like nowadays in the world of work, people can almost do so many other things that they prefer to do to make even the same or more money. Like, why would they go through your traditional educational avenue of going to not necessarily university, but going to learn something? And then I'm speaking from a contractor's perspective. So it's like go to college, learn a trade, become a brickie, because we're talking about brickies. Or I was telling Steve the other day that I watch people on like YouTube, for instance, watch YouTube, and these guys making millions of pounds, making videos talking about things that they like. It's like, well, no wonder there's a bit of a talent disposition, I suppose.
Yeah, I speak to my kids about that all the time, because I'm trying to look at them. I'm trying to say to them at the moment, and my kids are 12, so Harry's 12. My middle daughter, Freya, she's 9, and then Danielle, I'm going to get the ages wrong here. Daniela's 8, I think. But
that didn't sound convincing.
No, I'm pretty sure she is. Is about, and I'm not going to get on my high horse here about AI and all this kind of stuff, but the world that we know in the next 2 or 3 years is going to change far quicker than we've ever thought it was going to. So it's like, well, what works now is not going to work in 3 years' time. So there's no point really having the conversations with him yet. But I'm trying to say to my son, I'm just like, okay, you've got all these hopes, dreams, aspirations, and I don't want to dampen any of them. Not at all. And he's very creative anyway. But it's like, think also about what you're going to do, because a lot of the jobs that have traditionally been well-paying, well-meaning jobs
different.
Some of them won't even be there, right? And as it happens, he's more creative, so he's probably. I think they've got half a chance there because that. But it's just going to change insurmountably. So that was there. But from a talent perspective, no, it's fine. From a talent perspective, I've thought for a long time that, and it's interesting because you've just said about it's an industry-wide issue, and it is. There's not enough good people in our industry at the right level. The ones that are there can get swallowed up by HS2, the Maces, the Barclays, the Lend-Leases. I can't pay that money, right? Because I need to earn a margin from being a consultant. So my pitch to people really is, look, come on board with lacking in experience, right? Give me 3 years of your time. I'll give you 3 years of my time. And by the time you get to wherever it is, you'll be ready to make that leap and go and get that job that's going to pay you, I don't know, 75k or whatever it is. But to get you to that point, I'll turbocharge your growth, give you opportunities that other people wouldn't give you at that point.
Yeah.
And I can get you to that point. Now that's had to change, because back in the day I was like, why aren't these people coming to me?
Yeah.
Why do they leave when they get offered, like we were saying earlier, $5,000 more? And then I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, and it's like, well, okay, well that's why my business doesn't mean as much to them as it does to me.
Of course,
but ultimately, the change I made recently, to take it back to where you said, where is my business, is I'm getting more and more clients come to me who are clients that I could only have dreamt of 2 or 3 years ago. So very large companies, they, with the greatest of respect, are not paying my day rate to get someone with only 2 years of experience. They want someone with 20 years experience.
They want you.
Yeah. And this is a problem. So basically what we've done is we've said, right, okay, we're going to have those sort of cohort of people that are going to be learning the trade and working their way up. My cousin being one of them. He works for me now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the model so I can go and, I might not be able to pay someone 125 to 150k a year who's at the top of their game.
Is that what
they can do? Okay,
150k a year?
Yeah, if they're at the top of their game from a health and safety perspective.
Is that like in-house, or is that
legit? Yeah, it'd be good consultants can earn that if they want to work enough. So then I say, well, I don't mind. I'm not going to pay them that because I couldn't get a return on it, but I can pay them a good day rate. And then what I then say is that person needs to work for me for at least a quarter of their time a month, so I mean enough to them. That we can build a relationship. So rather than what's happened in the past is the minute they get a better offer, they're off. And I'm like, I can't be developing relationships like that. So that's really the evolution of our company, has gone from having lots and lots of people who are inexperienced with a few people at the top who are more experienced, to having a sort of a core nucleus of trusted people that have worked with us for a long time, and then trusted subcontractors that we can build with and that we can flex up with and flex down with. So that's really been there. That's sort of been the direction of travel. In terms of working with my wife, which you asked me about earlier, so she came from she was a merchandising director for a large sort of fashion house in London. So she sees the world in numbers. So she can just analyze trends and she can see things just from the screen. I'm not a numbers person in that way. She came on board. She wanted a job after she came back from having our 3 kids. Fashion isn't very accommodating to women who are coming back from with wanting work-life balance. They want people working 4 days a week, which means you work 5 days a week. She didn't want that, so she came on board. To start with, she always called it just as admin support. Obviously, she owned half the business with me. And quickly proved herself in any number of things. And essentially now is that we run the business together. Sarah provides, I can obviously be the sort of technical support, and I do a lot of the kind of client interface works and all of that kind of stuff. But she looks after the sort of make sure the cogs are oiled and that everything's turning in the right direction. And I don't say this lightly, she single-handedly has changed, she's changed the business. Oh, wow. I mean that honestly. And I'm there and I'm doing my thing. And yes, I lead it. But without having Sarah there, none of that stuff would have happened. So when people say, how do you get on with it? Can you ever get away from work? You have to set some clear boundaries. There are definitely times when I start talking about it over the dinner table or before we go to bed at night. That's sad, isn't it? Yeah. But she's better at it than I am. Yeah. She's like, Jack, we're not talking about this now. Right? It's like, no, let's talk about this tomorrow or whatever it is. But I look at it and go, well, if you can't, if you trust someone enough to be your wife or your husband, I know some people don't want to have that working dynamic in the middle of it, but for me, it's like I'll never be able to trust anyone as much as I would be able to Sarah. And yeah, it just works. Would I advise it to everyone? Maybe not. I think it depends on your relationship.
So why did you want to sort of like niche into the fit out game? Do you like, did that appetize you at all, did it? Because I love the fit out world, really.
Yeah, truth be told, we fell into it in terms of, so our first big client in the fit out world was probably 2014. They're still a client now and a brilliant client, Peldon Rose.
Oh yeah, Jitesh.
Yeah.
I recorded with you. We're talking about that episode on the way up here.
Right, okay.
We're just saying how, saying how funny it is that we turned up into his office and like moved all of his desk and chairs out of the way and like set up our podcast and just recorded with him and then just
left. Is that in Wimbledon?
Was it Wimbledon, Joe? I think it was. Yeah, I think it was.
So they were our first sort of foray into fit out in 2014. And we sort of developed a really deep relationship with them that we had to build the trust and rapport with over time. And then honestly, what happened was someone from that company moved to another company. And then they said, oh, Havio are the guys for this. Yeah. And then we started working with 2 companies, and then it turned into 3 and then 4. So there wasn't any great strategy behind it. In terms of why I like it though, I like the fast-paced nature of it. I love that. It probably sort of fits with my personality with, I don't, like 18 months, 2-year projects, they're fine. But it's like, I like the boom, boom, boom. Yeah.
Next.
From a business perspective, they're good. Let's be honest. From a business perspective, they're good for us because ultimately what happens more often than not, I think, with the fit out contractors is they take our price and they put their price on top because they're taking the role as the principal designer and the principal contractor. Yeah. So they're getting our service, I'm not saying for free, but they're getting our service and they're earning money out of it. So it's paid for. And we get 2 bites of the cherry. So when a project comes up in a fit out world, there's the principal designer piece, which is designing out risk before they start, which is not done that well very often within fit out. So we come in and advise from that perspective.
Which is probably quite helpful because, to be fair, that's changed so much, the PD, PC dynamic over the last 3 or 4 years, I suppose, whenever the regulations changed on that. I bet that changed, and I know I'm kind of digressing again, but I bet that changed your world of work as well, didn't it? Because if you're consulting early on from a PD realm, like the fit out contractor, I suppose they probably did before, but like more fit out contractors are taking on the PD now. Yes. Because you can't rely on anyone else, I suppose.
No, it was always really the intention of the regulation change for people who were in charge of the pre-construction phase and the design to take it on. Yeah, so it makes sense. But these guys and girls within the company, they haven't trained however long they've trained for and they want to create nice spaces, right? They don't want to worry about CDM, design risk management and fire management. Yeah, so it's like, well, okay, we'll get Havio to do that, and they'll give us the advice, and we'll follow the advice. And so
that's a good little niche for you, actually.
Yeah, it's a really good niche. And what we often find is we go into companies who are wanting our services, and they've always got the principal contractor bit sorted. They know they need to have construction phase plans and inspections, but you always ask them about the other bit, and they always look at you a bit funny, like, why are you asking that? And I'm like, well, that's, if you get that bit right, the other stuff flows. Now, the big problem with that is that the way fit out contractors, and you'll know this better than I, are appointed, you're working, you can get appointed on a Friday and you have to start on the Tuesday. Absolutely. And then how do you get the design stuff? How have you, and people don't want to appoint us before they get the contract signed, because then if the project gets shelved, then who carries the can? All that stuff. But
it suits that exact example there. It just fits and suits the fit out world because of how fast paced and how reactive and agile you've got to be.
Yeah. So I love it. Yeah. And from a business perspective, I'm not going to get all high and mighty about it. From a business perspective, it works because you're working on a quick turnaround of projects. So if you've got a really good client, they're wanting to turn around projects in 3 or 4 months, and then they get their next cohort of projects, and then so you could have a client give you, if they're sort of a big fit out contractor, they could be giving you 40, 50 projects a year. That's one client that you have to account manage, one client, but they're giving you all of those projects. So why would I then need those 450 clients that I talked about earlier? It's like, get 1 or 2 clients who give you 40 or 50 projects each a year, and you're sorted.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And that's really what we've tried to do over time. But it's all word of mouth.
But that's the best form of marketing. I always say that, you don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, and I used to, I'll be honest with you, I've tried it all. I've read the books, I've done looked at all the kind of stuff, and sort of, the thought leadership, the brand, all this kind of stuff. And hands down, bar none, just do a good job for people.
Yeah, you're right.
Act with integrity, do the right thing, give and take, and be there when someone needs you, and be reactive and quick. That's what I can't understand in our industry. People they try and say, okay, well, our service level agreement, we'll get back to you in 48 hours. It's like, no, someone in fit out needs you to get back to them in now.
Yesterday.
Exactly.
You ain't got 48 hours.
But I've always said that in my business. It's like, if someone contacts you, you get back to them as quickly as you possibly can, because that's when people need you, they need you. And ultimately, you're just trying to make yourself indispensable to them. So, because there's many a time when I'm not stupid enough to think that fit out contractors that we work for couldn't go and get their own internal team. They can, and it might be cheaper than getting me in, right? But why do people want us? Hopefully they want us because they know that they've got different levels of support when they need it. So if shit and fan do collide and the HSE are crawling all over them or something really bad's happened, I'll be on site whenever they need to.
Yeah.
You know, if someone called me now after this podcast and said we've had an incident on a site, I'll go there.
Not right now, though.
Not right now. No, I haven't got my phone with me.
Well, if you're wearing a doorbell jacket, they would leave me out.
But you know, it's a balancing act of, you know, understanding where you sit in the food chain as a consultancy and that you're never the only option in town. And I think sometimes people just get lazy with it. They think, oh, well, we've had this client for 10 years, so we can sort of,
get complacent.
Get complacent.
Yeah, of course.
Doesn't work for me.
Where do you think the world of health and safety is going in the next 5-10 years, I suppose? Do you think it's going to change?
Change beyond all measure. And there would be no one who could sit here genuinely in front of you now and tell you where it's going, because I don't think anyone knows.
Oh, okay. Let me rephrase that then. Where would you like it to go in the next 5 or 10 years if you could potentially make any changes?
To stop from the box ticking exercise.
Yeah, box ticking exercise, or how do you think it can improve, or where do you think we should be looking?
Okay, so ultimately, for me, it's about getting back to understanding who it's there for.
Yeah.
And let's be honest. So the way I look at it, it's like I said earlier, it's there to protect the people on the ground doing the work, right? If you protect them, you protect the directors of the business, right? If they don't have accidents, then the company doesn't have to worry about being prosecuted. Yeah. So for me, it's taking it back to basics and putting more onus and accountability and responsibility onto the people doing the job, right? To get them to want to do it for the right reasons and to get them to stop doing needless stuff that doesn't make it any safer. So if I had a magic wand, it would be to strip out all of that kind of stuff, needless stuff, to allow people just to get on, do the work and do it safely and not become a barrier to entry. It would then be to get, this is going to make me unpopular with quite a few of these people, but I'll say it. I would look at a lot of these accreditation schemes. I'd look at a lot of these competency schemes, and I would give a long, hard look and say, is this actually serving the industry, or is this actually making money for people in some capacity? And no, there's nothing wrong in earning money, or making money, but it's when it comes under the umbrella of health and safety. And health and safety gets the bad reputation because we get the blame for introducing this rule or that rule. Yeah. And actually you look at it and go, that's nothing we don't agree with that. But it's been created under this thing, and the health and safety is a nice, easy thing to say. It's why it's a requirement.
It's easy to create the requirement, hide behind health and safety and be like, oh, you got to do it now. Yeah. You've got to pay for it. Oh, okay, I'm lying in my pockets. But you can't not do it because it's health and safety. It's like,
I'll be honest with you, like my dad didn't get out solely for this reason, but he was in the haulage game. So he had tippers that he would run in and out of London. And I'm not for 1 minute suggesting that he was whiter than white, right? But then they brought in the FORS scheme, right, which was basically the fleet operator scheme in London. So if you go onto a tier 1, tier 2 site now, you will not be able to drive vehicles, skip vehicles, roll and offs, whatever, unless you're accredited to this scheme. Well, this scheme has grown arms and legs, right? And this is what I often find. Their fundamental aim for coming into being is usually very good. But then what happens is it gets momentum behind it, and it gets built up and it gets built up, and it's like layers and layers and layers. And then what happens is the people doing the work get so pissed off with it. Yeah. But then they either have to make a decision not to do it, or they have to make a decision that they're going to do it, but then they basically they've got a very negative output on health and safety and everything else. So I would like to remove some of that. And then I think the industry has to harness AI and what it can bring and not be scared of it. I mean, in my business in the last year, I've seen how that can be a force for good. And it doesn't mean it's going to replace your brain. It doesn't mean it's going to replace, doesn't mean it's going to replace people. I think it's inevitable that it replaces people. I think anyone who says that is being disingenuous. But the genie's out the bottle with that thing, right? And if you don't look at it and you don't try and get that into your workflows and into your business, you're going to be penalised somewhere down the track. So I would look at that and try and think about how that can be used within construction businesses, even in a very simple way. I look at it now and look at site managers still typing up meeting minute notes, and I'm going, why don't you just record that on an AI note taker? It takes it all for you, and it'll write better minutes than you'll ever write. And then you don't have to spend 2 hours behind your screen writing up notes, and you can get out on site. But I think a lot of site managers have got so used to doing that, they're then like, oh, they're worried that it's going to, I
No,
don't know.
you're right. No, you're right. Mr. Rumbol, Mr. Health and Safety, thanks for coming on and making health and safety interesting.
Thank you. I tried my best.
I'm only joking, mate. Thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
Jack.